God, in the name of the Most High.
We mentioned last week with regards to, and we continued with regards to the aspect of al-hisbah, which is enjoining the good and forbidding the bad, which is one of the very important aspects of the khilafah, of any khilafah. Any khilafah, it can't be a matter that is open for the person to do what they want. No, there has to be order. There has to be enjoining the good, calling to the good, calling the people towards that which benefits them in the dunya and the akhirah, and also forbidding the bad. And forbidding that which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has made haram or has made to be an action that is prohibited in Islam. There's no such thing as complete freedom, where the person just has freedom to do what they want. If that was the case, then there would be destruction. And that is, we live, for instance, here, a very simple example. We live here in Australia. If they were to tell you that there's no more road laws, the person can do what he wants on the roads and he can speed as much as he wants, imagine what will happen just in the area here that we live in. So there has to be order, and there has to be rules and regulations and restrictions. And first and foremost, that which is connected to the deen, that which is connected to the sins, that which harm the person, whether it's on a singular basis by himself or in the society that the person is in. So the importance of al-amr bil-ma'ruf wal-nahy anil munkar is something that is very important, and that's why Umar radiallahu anhu, he took upon this job, he took it upon himself, and he used to do it himself to show the importance of it and the reward of enjoining the good and forbidding the bad. And there are certain rules and regulations that surround the whole concept of amr bil ma'ruf and nahi anil munkar. What is the munkar? What is the bad that is prohibited, or that which the person calls against? All of these things are in the chapters or in the books that research this whole organization, or as we said, it became later on a part of the khilafah. There was a sector in the khilafah, as you have the treasury, as you have the judges, as you have gathered, there was a sector in the khilafah which was called al-hisbah. And al-hisbah is enjoining the good and forbidding the bad. And this was a position that was given to certain people who had to qualify for that position. First and foremost, knowledge of the deen, of the sharia. Not any person can go out and just enjoin the good, forbid the bad if they don't have knowledge. Second and foremost, strength and personality to be able to go out and to speak and to give this. So we mentioned last week we spoke specifically about the night patrols that Umar used to do and how important the night patrols they were. How Umar radiallahu anhu himself, the Khalifa, the most powerful person around at that time, he used to go out himself and patrol the streets of Medina and make sure that the people of Medina and the streets were safe, because as we know, at night time, this is when the majority of the bad takes place. During the day, everyone is busy. People are working, people are doing their things during the day, and then in the night, when the night time comes, person has time, person has the darkness of the night to hide them, and the person has the free time. And the worst thing that the person can have, and the most harmful thing that the person can have, is faragh, is emptiness. Is when the person is doing nothing. The person is just sitting there and doing nothing. When a person is sitting there doing nothing, something is going to come in. That's why the ulama, they say at-tabi'ah, that nature doesn't accept emptiness. It can't be just empty. It can't be just the person is doing nothing. The person is not doing anything. This is something that is very important. And this is something that mainly comes during the night. Mainly comes during the night. The natural instinct of the person is that when the night comes, the darkness comes, the ability to do certain things happens at that time. Wallah al-musta'an. So Umar radiallahu anhu, he used to go out at the night and the many stories that we mentioned show you how the night patrols benefited Umar radiallahu anhu from his knowledge and from the rulings that he used to, or that he changed during his night patrols because of certain things that he had seen radiallahu anhu, and the importance that he gave to this. Today, inshallah ta'ala, in a very summarized way, we're going to speak about the concern of Umar radiallahu anhu with regards to ilm, with regards to knowledge, and the ulama and the scholars of knowledge, which is like al-amr bil-ma'ruf wal-nahy al-munkar, a very important aspect of any khilafah, of any government, of any society. If there is no ilm, there's no knowledge, then the people are lost. Then the people are lost. That's why from the most important aspects of being given firmness in the deen, in the land, is what is the knowledge and the scholars who have attained the knowledge. That's why it is impossible. It is impossible that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives strength to the people, gives authority to the people, and the people are ignorant. And the people are people of jahl. Why? Because if the ignorant person is given power, then that power is going to be used in the place other than it is intended for. That's why the first revelation that was revealed to the Prophet ﷺ was a revelation of what? Of knowledge. Iqra, read. Iqra bismi rabbika alladhi khalaq. Read by the name of your Lord that has created. Read. The ulama, they say that we are a nation of reading. When we leave reading, we lose the information and we lose the knowledge. That's why the greatest thing that we lack today is the ability to read, the ability to gain knowledge. Any person who wants to gain knowledge, they have to be a person who reads. There has to be a person who researches, who looks up, who goes into the Islamic library and searches in the Islamic library and reads. It's not sufficient enough for the person to watch a clip here and there, a 5-minute clip, a 10-minute clip, half an hour, and then to say that I have gained the knowledge. This is not enough. This is not sufficient enough. This is not what is called seeking knowledge. And this is not what is called preserving the knowledge. This is not what is called preserving the knowledge. That's why the one thing that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He ordered the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam to ask to increase was ilm. The one thing that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He ordered the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam to request, to ask to increase was ilm. Where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَقُلْ رَبِّ زِدْنِي عِلْمًا. And say, O Muhammad, say, O my Lord, increase from my knowledge. وَقُلْ رَبِّ زِدْنِي عِلْمًا. And say, O Muhammad, say to your Lord, let him increase from my knowledge. And this was the aspect that the Sahaba radiallahu anhum, they understood and they took on from the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he used to make the dua, a beautiful dua. And I always say that you want to understand the relationship between the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, look at the ad'iyah that he used to make. Look at the supplications that the Prophet ﷺ, he used to make, call out to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. From these ad'iyah, Nabi ﷺ used to make the dua, Allahumma inni a'udhu bika min ilmin la yanfa' wa min qalbin la yakhsha' wa min nafsin la tashba' wa min da'watin la yustajabu laha. Beautiful dua. If you understand the meaning and you contemplate on the meaning. Nabi ﷺ, he used to make the dua himself, and he taught the Sahaba to make this dua. Allahumma inni a'udhu bika min ilmin la yanfa'. Oh Allah, I seek refuge in you from knowledge that is not beneficial. From knowledge that is not beneficial. Is there knowledge that is not beneficial? Yes, there is knowledge that is not beneficial. The knowledge that the person gains or the person seeks and doesn't turn from knowledge into action is knowledge that is not beneficial. or knowledge that will get you to attack the Qur'an or attack the Sunnah or to leave the Qur'an or to leave the Sunnah is knowledge that is not beneficial. So you need to seek refuge in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala from knowledge that is not beneficial. And to ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to give you knowledge that is beneficial to you in this dunya and the akhirah. وَمِن قَلْبٍ لَا يَخْشَعْ, and from a heart that doesn't have khushu', doesn't have humbleness. Who's making this dua? Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. وَمِن قَلْبٍ لَا يَخْشَعْ, and from a heart that doesn't have humbleness, doesn't have khushu'. وَمِن نَفْسٍ لَا تَشْبَعْ, and from a nafs, from a soul, from a nafs that doesn't feel or doesn't reach a state of shaba', a state of being full, content. And this is one of the worst characteristics that the person can have. A nafs that is never satisfied, that never reaches satisfaction. When Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, he warned the people from this. He warned the people and he said that this is the natural form of the son of Adam. Where he said in the hadith, لو كان لابن آدم واد من ذهب. If Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he had granted the son of Adam a valley of gold. If Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he gave the son of Adam a valley of gold, would he be thankful? Would he return to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala because he gave him that valley of gold? What did the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam say? لَتَمَنَّ أَن يَكُونَ لَهُ وَادٍ آخر. أو كما قال صلى الله عليه وسلم. Then he would have wished that he had another valley. One valley is not sufficient. So from a nafs that isn't, or that doesn't reach the stage of satisfaction. That's why Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam in the other hadith he said that if the person has his daily nourishment, a roof over his head, a place to sleep, and a cover that covers him, it's as if he has the whole world. Al-qana'a, satisfaction, content, being content with what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given you. وَمِن نَفْسٍ لَا تَشْبَعْ, very important dua to make, very important. وَمِن دَعْوَةٍ لَا يُسْتَجَابُ لَهَا, and from a dua, from a supplication that is not answered by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. From a da'wah that is not answered by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And the door or the manners of dua and that which is related to the dua is in the chapters of dua and in the researches of dua. But very simply, Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, he says that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he responds to the dua of the son of Adam, مَا لَمْ يُعَجِّلْ. That Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he responds to the dua of the son of Adam until he reaches the state of ta'jeel, of hasting, where he says, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala hasn't responded to me. Why hasn't Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala responded to me? Why hasn't Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala answered my dua? The person, he becomes what? He hastens the response or the istijaba of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he answers the dua, مَا لَمْ يُعَجِّلْ, where he starts to complain and saying that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala hasn't responded, hasn't responded to my dua, and hasn't responded to my dua. So 4 very important things. علم لا ينفع, علم لا ينفع, قلب لا يخشع, من نفس لا تشبع, من دعاء لا يستجاب لها. And this is something that the son of Adam should always make these dua. Take it as a basic principle that any dua you find that was made or was done by the Prophet ﷺ, go and learn it and implement it and say it and repeat it in your life. Because if the Prophet ﷺ used to make that dua, then we are more in need of making that dua. Like Nabi ﷺ, when his wife was asked, and a number of his wives were asked, what was the dua that Nabi ﷺ used to always make, or used to constantly make, or used to repeat a lot? Their response was what? Nabi ﷺ, he used to constantly say the dua, Ya muqallib al-qulub, thabbit qalbi ala dinik. A changer of the heart, keep my heart firm on your deen. Who's saying this? And Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, the Prophet, peace be upon him, the one who has the most purest of hearts, the one whom his heart is the most connected to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Yet he used to make that dua to keep his heart firm. Why? To teach the ummah that the firmness of the heart, that the iman, all of these things are only in the hands of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That is not from my own strength, not from my own power. That's why when the mu'adhin, when he says hayya ala salat and he says hayya ala al-falah, what does the person listening to the adhan say? La hawla wa la quwwata illa billah. Hayya ala salat means what? Means come to the prayer. Hayya ala al-falah, come to success. The responder or the mu'adhin, the person who is listening, he says la hawla wa la quwwata illa billah. There is no strength, no ability except by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And that's to understand that concept, that it is not in your hands, not in your ability. It's only in the hands of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That's why one of the ways that shaitan, he enters upon the heart of the son of Adam is that he makes him think that his actions have come from his own strength and his own ability. I did such and such. I performed such and such. This is a disease of the heart. No, everything goes back to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Everything is given by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And the ummah, with regards to ilm, the ummah witnessed of the genius of Umar radiallahu anhu when it came to the knowledge of Islam. And Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, he witnessed the knowledge of Umar radiallahu anhu when it came to the matters of Islam. That's why Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, he said that if there were to be in my ummah muhaddathun, al-muhaddathun are the ones who receive inspiration, not revelation, inspiration. Revelation is wahy, inspiration is that which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He gives His slaves and guides them towards the haqq, guides them towards the truth, guides them towards that which is better for them. Like when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He inspired the mother of Musa to what? To put Musa as a child, to put him in the little kafan, fit tabut, and then to put him in the river and to leave him in the river. This didn't come, no mother with the love that she has for her child would do that from her own deducing of the events that are taking place. This came as what? Inspiration from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. وَإِذْ أَوْحَيْنَا إِلَىٰ أُمِّ مُوسَى, when we inspired the mother of Musa. So Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, he says that if there were muhaddathun in my ummah, it would be Umar. It would be Umar. And the dream that the Umar radiallahu, that the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, he saw when he was picking up with the bucket, he was picking up water from the river, and then Umar came and his strength of picking up water was very strong. The other dream with drinking of the laban, the milk, all of this was interpreted with Umar to be the strength and to be the knowledge. And the ummah witnessed for this. And he was in the forefront from the main sahaba, from the fuqaha of the sahaba, the ones who had the understanding of Islam, was Umar radiallahu anhu. And the importance that he gave to the deen was such or so much to the fact that everyone or the khulafa that came after him implemented the ways of Umar ibn al-Khattab. Abu Bakr as-Siddiq radiallahu anhu, his term of khilafah was short. His term of khilafah was short, less than 3 years. And the majority of that time he was fighting Ahlul Riddah. He was in the wars of apostasy. And he was the one who established the basis for the Muslimin after him. But his time was short. Umar radiallahu anhu, on the other hand, his khilafah was long. How long was the khilafah of Umar? Anyone know how long the khilafah of Umar was? 10 years. 10 years his khilafah was. And the khilafah of Abu Bakr was less than 3 years. So in these 10 years, Umar radiallahu anhu, and it's not like his term finished, yalla, we elect someone else. No, his term finished with his death. Khalas, his time has come. His appointed time of death was 10 years after that of Abu Bakr as-Siddiq radiallahu anhu. But in those 10 years, Umar radiallahu anhu was able to establish the principles and the centers of knowledge. And the centers of knowledge. And this is why we'll come to speak about, in the time of Umar, you had areas that were opened that didn't have any Muslimin in it before. and people entering into Islam in these opened areas, in Asham. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala reopen Asham and give it to the Muslimin. In Bilad Asham, in Egypt, the same thing. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala return it to the Muslimin. In all the countries, in Iraq, in Baghdad, in Al-Kufa. Baghdad back then didn't exist at the time of Umar. There was no such thing as Baghdad. Baghdad was built later. Al-Kufa, Al-Basra, all of these areas, they were opened and the da'wah of Islam began in these areas. So the importance or the need of knowledge was established. That's why any area, any place that is new to Islam, you need to have prominent scholars, knowledgeable people who establish the ilm. If it's left to any person who wants to claim himself to be a person of knowledge, wants to give himself the title of being knowledgeable, then the people will be lost. Then the ilm that will be established is ilm. If there's no what is called raqabah, if there's no watching of what is being taught and what is being spread of knowledge, there has to be what? There has to be someone who is watching over this. And that's why Umar radiallahu anhu, as we will come to understand, he built the center of knowledge in Medina, which was the center of the Khilafah, the capital of the Khilafah after the death of the Prophet ﷺ. And then from Medina, everything else was sent out. But he established the center of ilm in Medina al-Munawwara. From the important aspects that took place in the life of Umar was his caution in accepting a hadith. As we know, my dear brothers and sisters in Islam, the Qur'an is preserved 100% in the hearts of the people and was written down. At the time of Abu Bakr as-Siddiq radiallahu anhu, we mentioned that one of the main accomplishments in the time of Abu Bakr as-Siddiq was the first gathering of the Qur'an that happened in the time of Abu Bakr as-Siddiq. And there were strict guidelines that Abu Bakr had set with regards to gathering the Qur'an. It had to be witnessed, memorized by two and written by two people at least. So two people have to have memorized it, the verse, and two people have to have written it down. And that's the compiling of the Qur'an was done in that way. So the preservation of the Qur'an, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, إِنَّا نَحْنُ نَزَّلْنَا الذِّكْرَ وَإِنَّا لَهُ لَحَافِظُونَ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He promised the preservation of the Qur'an. The Sunnah, on the other hand, the promise of the preservation of the Sunnah is there. But the difference between the Qur'an and Sunnah is that we can't say that, wallah, there's a verse that is weak, or there's a verse that is fabricated, or there's a verse that is sahih. No, every single verse that we have in the Qur'an is authentic from the highest levels of authenticity. Every single verse, not only every single verse, every single letter of the Qur'an. And every single vow that is on every letter in the Qur'an. Whereas the hadith, we have hadith which is sahih, we have hadith which is hasan, we have hadith which is da'if, and within the da'if there is the mawdu', the fabricated. So after the death of the Prophet ﷺ, and during the time of the Khulafa, and a bit later than the time of Umar and Uthman, the fabrication of hadith began. But Umar radiallahu anhu, before that could begin, he used to be very cautious in the accepting of a hadith. And one of the stories that is mentioned is that Abu Musa al-Ash'ari radiallahu anhu, the famous Sahabi, he went to the house of Umar and he knocked the door and asked for permission to enter. First time he knocked the door, he wasn't given permission. Second time he knocked the door, wasn't given permission. Third time he knocked the door, wasn't given permission, so what did he do? He walked away. And the knocking of the door, the sunnah of the knocking of the door is what? The sunnah of knocking of the door is to knock with the tip of the finger 3 times. Not to bash the door, no, with the tip of the finger 3 times. 1, 2, 3. You wait, no answer, again, 1, 2, 3. No answer, 1, 2, 3. No answer, you walk away. You walk away. Or even if the answer is there and is told that you're not in a state to accept anyone, you walk away. And there's no haya in this, there's no shyness in this. If anything, the person who is coming to knock the door should understand. So Abu Musa al-Ash'ari, he came to Umar radiallahu anhu and he asked for permission 3 times. He didn't get the permission, even though he knew that Umar was inside. He knew that Umar was inside. But he didn't get permission, so he walked away. These days, the person knows, you can see the car outside, knocks on the door, doesn't answer, looks in the window. What's the person doing? Why isn't he answering the door? Or he starts to call out the person's name. No, the person inside doesn't want to answer the door. You walk away. There's no, sometimes this is yani, the adab, the manners of requesting to enter or to visit someone. The adab to visit someone. There's certain manners that the person follows. Inshallah, for another lesson, inshallah. That with the adab of visiting. For Abu Musa al-Ash'ari radiallahu anhu, he thought in his mind he must be busy. He's not answering the door, so he must be busy. So I walked away. So Umar radiallahu anhu, he finished what he was doing. He called out, said, I thought I heard Abu Musa al-Ash'ari. He said, yes. Said, where is he? He said, he went. So he called him. He goes, why did you leave? He said, this is how we were ordered by the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He says, what do you mean this is how you're ordered by the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam? I've never heard of this before. You either bring me a witness or you're going to face you're going to face some bad reprimanding because of it. So Abu Musa al-Ash'ari radiallahu anhu, as mentioned in another hadith by Abu Sa'id al-Khudri, he says that Abu Musa al-Ash'ari, he came to the masjid and his face was yellow. He was scared. He's thinking, I need to bring a witness, or else Umar radiallahu, I'm going to face Umar radiallahu anhu. So he came to the masjid of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam and he said, I need a witness for the hadith such and such. So he said that only the youngest of us is going to witness with you, O Abu Musa. The youngest of the Sahaba is going to witness with you, O Abu Musa. So Abu Sa'id al-Khudri, he went and he witnessed to the hadith, إِذَا اسْتَأْذَنَ أَحَدُكُمْ ثَلَاثًا فَلَمْ يُؤْذَنْ لَهُ فَلْيَرْجِعْ. If one of you requests to enter or to knocks on the door 3 times separately and is not given permission, to leave. To leave and to not continue. So this is to show not wallah just because, and this is not because Umar radiallahu anhu, he didn't trust Abu Musa. That's not if anything, Umar radiallahu anhu was the one who sent Abu Musa al-Ash'ari to one of the cities to be the teacher. But this is just to teach the people the importance of what? Being cautious when it comes to relaying the hadith of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, or saying the hadith of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Another very important aspect with regards to knowledge is that Umar radiallahu anhu used to always revise. He used to always sit with the Sahaba and they would revise the ilm. And he would ask about something if he didn't know. If he didn't know the ruling of a certain issue or the answer to a certain question, he would ask. And there's no such thing as being shy or thinking that people are going to look at me different if I say I don't know, or if I don't know the ruling of that. Abu Hurairah radiallahu anhu, he says that a man or a woman was bringing to Umar radiallahu anhu, who used to draw tattoos. He used to do tattoos at the time of Umar. So Umar radiallahu anhu, he gets up and he says, Unshidukum billah, I call upon you by the name of Allah. Man sami'a min al-Nabi sallallahu fil washb. Whoever has heard a hadith from the Prophet sallallahu regarding tattoos. I personally haven't heard. Umar radiallahu anhu, he says, I haven't heard the hadith, or I can't remember a hadith that is mentioned from the Prophet ﷺ with regards to tattoos. Who can mention a hadith with regards to tattoos? فقال أبي بن كعب, or فقال Abu Hurairah, he says, I got up and I said, O Amir al-Mu'mineen, I have heard. He said, what did you hear? He said, I heard the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, لا تشمن ولا تستوشمن, as the hadith narrated in Sahih al-Bukhari. Do not get tattoos done, nor be the one who is drawing the tattoo. لا تشمن ولا تستوشمن. Do not do the tattoo and do not be the one who is doing the action in itself. And you don't receive the action and don't do the action. And this is in many things in the Sharia. It doesn't mean just because, masalan, alcohol is prohibited to drink, that you go and you work as someone who pours alcohol for people. That's haram. It's haram. The same thing with the females, the plucking of the eyebrows. It's not just that it's not allowed, that it's prohibited to pluck the eyebrows, it's prohibited also to be the one who's doing the plucking. Or, for instance, anything that has to do with the haram. You can't be the one who's doing it, and you can't be the one who is doing the action in itself. That's why even in itself, the person, for instance, has a garden, or has a farm, or has a garden of grapes. The person grows grapes. And then someone comes and says, okay, I'll buy from you everything that comes out of your garden every year for the best of price. And that person who comes, he has a t-shirt that has such and such winery. That he owns a winery. That he owns, or he makes wine. He makes champagne, or whatever it is that he makes. And he's coming and saying, I'll buy it off you. And then you look and you see and you ask, okay, what are you going to do with these grapes? I'm going to make wine out of it. Are you allowed to sell it to him? Of course not. Even though naturally, grapes, is it haram to sell grapes? It's not haram. But if you know that these grapes are going to be used to make wine, then it's haram for you to sell these grapes. And anything that you are selling that you know is going to be used in the haram, it's prohibited for you to sell to that person. So he don't receive tattoos, nor be the one who is doing the tattoo in itself. In another hadith, Umar radiallahu anhu, he was asked about a man who becomes in the state of janaba while traveling. Meaning that he needs to make ghusl. He needs to have a shower, a bath. And he doesn't find any water. So Umar radiallahu anhu, he says that you don't pray until you find water. So Ammar bin Yasir, he says, O Amir al-Mu'mineen, don't you remember when me and you were together? And that we didn't find, we became in a state of janaba and we didn't have any water. He says, as for me, tayammum was revealed. And tayammum is what? If the person wants to make wudu and doesn't have any water, with the soil, with the sand, hits his hand, does his hands, then does his face, and it's finished. That's sufficient. Does his face and then does his arms. So Ammar bin Yasir, what did Ammar bin Yasir say? He says, okay, that's for wudu, for ghusl, I have to get my whole body, so I turned around in the dirt. And he got dirt over his whole body. He laid down on the floor and he turned around on the floor. He did qiyas, he did analogy from his own understanding that for wudu you just need to do the hands and the face. For ghusl I have to do the whole body, so I turned around on the floor. And as for you, O Amir al-Mu'mineen, you didn't do anything and you waited until you found water, then you did ghusl and then you prayed. And when we came to the Prophet ﷺ, he said, إِنَّمَا يَكْفِيكَ هَذَا. It was sufficient enough for you, O Ammar, to do such and such, to do the hands, wipe the face, and then to do the hands. And to wipe the hands from the dirt, and that's it. Even if it's janaba, even if the person has to perform ghusl, and he has no water, can't find any water, and there's no water around, there's no person to ask if there's any water, and the time for salat is approaching, then you just do what? You do tayammum. You hit the soil with your hands, the dirt, you do your face, then you hit your hands, you do the right, and you do the left. Difference of opinion whether it's just the hands or the whole arm. That's between the fuqaha. So Umar, he said, اتق الله يا عمار. He says, في Allah أو عمار. فقال إن شئت لم أحدث به. He said, if you want, O Umar, I won't relay this hadith. He says, you relay it and you do what you want, for this is a sunnah that Umar, he witnessed and then he forgot. This is a sunnah that Umar witnessed, then he forgot it. And then Ammar radiallahu anhu, he remembered it. And Umar didn't remember. I don't remember doing, or I don't remember that incident taking place. وهو لم يكذب عمار. And I'm not saying that Ammar is a liar, بل أمره أن يحدث به. But he ordered him to relay that hadith. Even though I have forgotten it. Even though I have forgotten it. So here the aspect here is what, or the point here is what, is the establishment of, if you don't know the answer to the question, you don't need to answer the question. You don't have to answer the question. And this is something that the ulama, they would advise the students of knowledge. The first thing they would teach them is how to say la a'lam. Is how to say I don't know. Is how to say I don't know. The famous story, Imam Malik, when the man came from Al-Maghrib, from northern Africa, he came to Medina to Imam Malik with a list of questions. And when he came to Imam Malik, he asked him the questions, and Imam Malik, he replied to most of the questions, and there were questions that he didn't know. So he said, these questions, Allahu A'lam, I don't know the answer to them. So the man said, oh Imam Malik, I have come from northern Africa, I've traveled miles, thousands of kilometers to reach you. And then you're telling me I don't know, what do I tell the people? He said, tell the people that Imam Malik said, I don't know. As simple as that. Tell the people that Imam Malik said, La a'lam. I don't know the answer. If you want to come back later or in another time, I might know the answer. But at the moment, I don't know the answer. And this is in society. There's a problem that we have in society today, is that they think that the person who is in the position of a sheikh or an imam or a scholar, they think that that person, he is what? Knows everything. Knows everything. To the extent where some people, they'll call the sheikh up if they have a problem with their car. The sheikh, I have a problem with my car. Or sheikh, I have a problem with this. Or even if it's an Islamic question, sheikh, what's the ruling on such and such? And the sheikh takes a minute to think about the answer. And the person starts to get bored. He says, don't you know the answer, sheikh? I'm thinking. And sometimes, subhanAllah, sometimes you'll be in a majlis and the question will be asked and you have people around you. And the people will throw in the answer straight away. And the shaykh is there, he's thinking. He's thinking of the answer. And then the people would throw the answers in. And the shaykh is thinking, alhamdulillah, وَكَفَ اللَّهُ الْمُؤْمِنِينَ الْقِتَالِ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, khalas, you don't have to answer it, someone else has answered. Thinking that answering the question sometimes is a privilege. Or is something that is an honor. No, it's a responsibility. It's a responsibility that you're facing Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala on the day of judgment. People don't look at it that way. So sometimes if the person, he doesn't know the answer, if Umar radiallahu anhu, the Khalifa of the Muslimin, in certain areas he would say, I don't know, and he will gather the Sahaba and he will counsel or take the counseling of the Sahaba. Then who are we? Especially in a matter that you are not certain about. That you are not certain about. Sometimes you receive a call, you tell the person, you call me later, half an hour, let me research. Let me look into the matter, let me look into the topic. Wallahi, once there was a question, I told the sister, give me a week, 2 weeks. Call me back in a week or 2 weeks. Let me research the topic. Let me look into the topic. It's not on wallah hack, bang, you give the fatwa and you give the question, you give the answer and you kada. No, you have to be patient. Because the ruling or that which I am saying to you, you're not responsible for it. This is on my neck. I am the one who's going to be responsible for it on the day of judgment. Or the shaykh is the one who's going to be responsible for it on the day of judgment. So be gentle with the mashayikh. Take it easy on the mashayikh, on the people of ilm, on the people of knowledge. Sometimes people think the answer is so simple. But the shaykh sometimes is not just looking at the simple answer. The shaykh sometimes is studying the whole situation. The shaykh sometimes is looking at the person who is coming to him and asking, what answer is best for him? Even though the answer is the same. But how I give that person the answer is different from one person to the other. One person might come and ask about zakat or ask about a ruling in Islam. When you look at the situation, the scenario that they are in, he's different to someone else who's asking the exact same question. And this is what Umar radiallahu anhu, this is what he understood. That not every person is the same. From his famous sayings radiallahu anhu with regards to seeking knowledge. He said radiallahu anhu, إِنَّ الرَّجُلَ لَيَخْرُجُ مِن مَنْزِلِهِ وَعَلَيْهِ مِنَ الْجِبَالِ مِثْلُ جِبَالِ تُهَامَةٍ. He says a man will go out of his house and he has sins on him like the amount of the mountains of Tihama, which were big mountains. فَإِذَا سَمِعَ الْعِلْمَ. If he listens to the ilm, خاف, he gets scared. وَرَجِعْ, he returns. وَتَاب, he repents. فَانْصَرَفَ إِلَى مَنْزِلِهِ, he returns to his house. وَلَيْسَ عَلَيْهِ ذَنْبٌ. And there's not one sin upon him. He left his house with the sins like the mountains upon him. He went and he sat down and he listened to the ilm. He got scared. He stepped back. He repented. And then he went home with no sins. Just from listening to majlis ilm. Just from sitting and listening to ilm. فَلَا تُفَارِقُ مَجَالِسَ الْعُلَمَاءِ. Don't stay away or don't leave the sittings of the ulama, the sittings of the mashayikh. Wallahi brothers, sometimes you would sit down or we would sit down and we would listen to the mashayikh and wallahi we wouldn't understand sometimes one word. One word of what the shaykh is saying, especially in the beginning of seeking knowledge. One word we won't understand what the shaykh is saying, but you sit down and you listen. And if one word you understand and it changes something, then the whole lecture is worth it. The whole lecture, the whole time is worth it. Wallahi, there was brothers, I remember this, and I saw this with my own eyes. There were brothers that were coming from overseas, they were doing khuruj. They were from Pakistan, India, Bangladesh, one of those countries. They didn't understand the word of English. And one of the mashayikh, he was given a lecture at Lakemba Mosque, this is 10, 15 years ago. Giving a lecture at Lakemba Mosque in English. And the brothers were doing khuruj there. They were sleeping in the masjid. Wallahi, they sat in the front row. The whole entire lecture, they didn't even flinch. They didn't even move. And they're sitting down and they're looking at the shaykh and they're so amazed. And then when we finished, the brothers went up to speak to him. They didn't understand the word of English. The shaykh told them, why are you sitting here? If you don't understand the word, why? He said, khalas, this is ilm. Whether understand or not understand, I'm not saying to go and to sit in front of someone you don't understand, but they've trained themselves that khalas, they're in the masjid, there's a lesson that is being given, I sit down and I listen. That's why the Sahaba, they were described as being like what? As if birds were on their heads when they would sit in front of the Prophet ﷺ. They would sit and they would listen. And they would sit and they would, and not every single one of the Sahaba was on the same level of understanding. This person understands something, that person understands something. They were on different levels. That's why, for instance, when Nabi ﷺ, we mentioned with the death of the Prophet ﷺ, when he went onto the mimbar and he said, what do you say about a man who has been given the choice between meeting his Lord and between remaining in his dunya? And that man, he chose to meet his Lord. Umar, Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu, he began to cry. He said, why are you crying, Abu Bakr? Because he understood. He understood that the man that he's talking about is himself. He said, a man has been given the choice, he means himself. And that the choice he made was to return to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, meaning that his death is near. So as soon as Abu Bakr he heard this, he began to cry. And he said, this is the nearing of the death of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So not everyone who's sitting down understands the same. Another saying of Umar radiallahu anhu, تَفَقَّهُ قَبْلَ أَن تُسَوَّدُوا أي تصيروا سادة قومكم. Have knowledge, seek the knowledge before you become in a position of leadership, in a position of your leader in your family. Before you become a leader in your family, فَتَمْنَعُكُمُ الْأَنَفَ مِنَ الْعِلْمِ. Then the pride will prevent you from seeking knowledge. فَتَعِيشُ جُهَّالًا. You remain the rest of your life as a jahil. Seek the knowledge before you put in a position. This position could be at work. This position could be at home, getting married, having children. The person finds himself, he's in the position, he's got pride. He can no longer seek knowledge. Seek knowledge before you are put in that position. Because knowledge cannot be gained with an atom's weight of knowledge. Atom's weight of knowledge, you'll gain no. Atom's weight of pride, you will gain no knowledge whatsoever. You can't. it goes against the concept of pride or the concept of seeking knowledge. The same thing with the person, Al-Shafi'i radiallahu anhu. Imam Al-Shafi'i, the great scholar of Islam, as the famous story as we know, from looking at the ankle of a female. Looking at the ankle. By mistake, not in wallah, he was standing there and he was waiting for the ankle to show. Then he looked at the ankle. No, by mistake, looked at the ankle. He said, I could no longer memorize the Qur'an. I could no longer memorize the Qur'an. He used to have photographic memory, Imam Shafi'i. Photographic memory. He looks at the page, looks at the line, khalas, that's it, it's memorized. And there are many scholars who like that. They'll read the book, the page once, that's it, they don't have to return to that page or that book. Photographic memory. So he used to have to cover one side to memorize the other so the words don't what? So the words don't mix with each other. If his eye caught a word from the other page, khalas, that's it, he memorized it like that. So Imam Shafi'i, after he saw that ankle, he couldn't memorize anymore. He would look at the page for an hour, 2 hours, 3 hours, couldn't memorize it. So he went to his teacher, Waki' ibn al-Jarrah radiallahu anhu, one of the teachers of Imam al-Shafi'i, Imam Waki', one of the great scholars of Islam. And he told him, he asked him about it, and he put it in poetry. سألت وقيعي عن سوء حفظي فدلني إلى ترك المعاصي وقال إن علم الله نور ونور الله لا يعطى لعاصي. I spoke to Waki' about my lack of memorization. So he guided me to what? To leave sins. And that the knowledge of Allah is nur. And the nur of Allah is not given to someone who what? Who commits sins. وَنُورُ اللَّهِ لَا يُعْطَى لِعَاصِي. From that seeing of the ankle mistakenly. And people, very important to understand, people are or people face things differently to other people. Yani for Imam al-Shafi'i, the position that he's in, the place that he's in, the status that he's in, an ankle was enough to turn him off. Yani to get his balance shaken. Whereas other people, if they see the whole body naked, it doesn't do anything to them. But to Imam al-Shafi'i, to teach him, because of the position that he's in, that even that little ankle, that you saw, even this you have to stay away from, Imam al-Shafi'i. Because it's not good, or you can't be in that position if you are like that. So it's very important with the seeking of knowledge. That's why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, what does He say? وَاتَّقُوا اللَّهِ وَيُعَلِّمُكُمُ اللَّهِ. Fear Allah, have taqwa. After taqwa comes what? Comes ilm. After taqwa comes the ilm from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Another very famous saying, الْعِلْمُ إِن لَمْ يَنْفَعْكَ لَمْ يَضُرُّكَ. Knowledge, if it doesn't benefit you, in you what you see doesn't benefit you, it won't harm you. العلم إن لم ينفعك لم يضرك. It will not harm you unless it's done for a reason other than the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Now, Umar radiallahu anhu, during his khilafah, as we said, he made Medina, he turned al-Medina into the center of fatwa and into the center of seeking knowledge. He made it the hub in which every other state or every other area would come to seek knowledge. And this is something that is very important. That's why during the time of the Prophet ﷺ, Medina was the capital of the Khilafah. And after he died, it remained the capital of Khilafah. During the Khilafah of Abu Bakr, Umar and Uthman. And it wasn't until the Khilafah of Ali radiallahu anhu that he moved the capital somewhere else. To keep the fitna away from Medina. To keep the bloodshed, the killing, or to keep the fitna, the trials and tribulations between the people away from Medina. After the fitna of Uthman and the killing of Uthman in his own house, the assassination of Uthman in his own house in Medina, Ali radiallahu anhu said, no, we have to move the capital away from Medina to preserve and to protect the Medina. But during the time of Umar radiallahu anhu, the center of knowledge of fatwa was in al-Medina. And the reason for that is that Medina had the largest number of the Sahaba. And Umar radiallahu anhu, as we mentioned in previous lessons, Umar radiallahu anhu, he put a travel ban. Umar radiallahu anhu, he put a travel ban on the older Sahaba. The older Sahaba, this Sahabi wanted to go here, this Sahabi wanted to go there. Umar says, no, you stay in Medina. Another Sahabi wanted to leave, no, you stay in Medina. I need you in Medina. If anything happens, a matter comes out, we need to sit down, I need you to be here. I need you to be around. So he put a travel ban on some of the Sahaba in Medina. And he kept close to him. He kept close to him the older Sahaba, the older generation Sahaba, the Muhajirin, the people who witnessed Badr, the people who witnessed Uhud. He kept them close to him. The number of Sahaba who gave fatwa or who were known for their fatwa was over 130 Sahabi. From the ones who used to give a lot of fatwa, who were known for their opinions, were seven Sahaba. Umar, Ali, Abdullah ibn Mas'ud, Aisha radiallahu anha, Zayd ibn Thabit, Abdullah ibn Abbas, and Abdullah ibn Umar. 7 Sahaba, they were known to be the Sahaba who gave a lot of fatwa, or who gave a lot of the opinions that were mentioned. And one of the scholars, he said that each one of them, his fatwa could be gathered in a large book. Each and every one of them. Their fatwa could be gathered in a large book. And not too long ago, there was a project that was done that gathered the opinions of a lot of the Sahaba. Abu Bakr as-Siddiq, Umar, Khattab, Uthman, Ali, Abdullah bin Mas'ud, Abdullah bin Abbas. Books that gathered the opinions of the Sahaba, because the opinions of the Sahaba were preserved by the ulama. In books like Musannaf ibn Abi Shayba, Musannaf Abdul Razzaq, the Muwatta of Imam Malik, the books of As-Sunan, they preserved the opinions of the Sahaba. And the most famous books for this, Musannaf ibn Abi Shayba and Musannaf Abdul Razzaq. These 2 books were famous for preserving the opinions of the Sahaba in the books of ilm. So Umar radiallahu anhu, he kept them around. From the ones that didn't used to give as much as the other Sahaba radiallahu anhum, the means like the Abu Bakr as-Siddiq radiallahu anhu. And the reason being for his short khilafah. Salama radiallahu anha. Anas ibn Malik radiallahu anhu. Abu Sa'id al-Khudri, Abu Hurairah, Uthman ibn Affan, Mu'adh ibn Jabal, Abdullah ibn Zubayr. Some of the famous Sahaba that were known for their fatwa. And Umar radiallahu anhu, the Sahaba that were known, he kept them close to him in Medina. And he made the Medina a center. And then other places were established by Umar radiallahu anhu. And some of the famous places that were established was the school in Mecca itself. Mecca itself, whoever's been to Umrah, whoever's been to Hajj, Mecca itself has a beauty and Medina has a beauty. And some people are attracted. Some people, they say, I enjoyed Medina aktar, or I like Medina. Some people say, no, I like Mecca aktar. Each person has their, what they lean towards. Mecca at the time of the Khulafa al-Rashideen, Mecca was a place that was, the people used to go to for ibadah, for seeking of knowledge. And it was made an area that couldn't be left alone. Especially Mecca is the place that people come for Umrah, for Hajj, to visit the Kaaba, to do the different rituals in the Haram. So there needed to be people who were there and scholars who were there who were teaching. Now one of the main teachers of Mecca was a student of Umar radiallahu anhu himself. He was Abdullah ibn Abbas. Abdullah ibn Abbas, the son of the uncle of the Prophet ﷺ, al-Abbas, the first cousin of the Prophet ﷺ. Abdullah ibn Abbas, he was the student of Umar ibn al-Khattab. And throughout the years, and we mentioned this previously in the lessons of Umar ibn al-Khattab, that Umar ibn al-Khattab, he gave importance to the youth, to the young Sahaba that he saw potential in. He looked at Abdullah ibn Abbas, he saw potential in him, so he brought him close and he taught him and he opened up to him. And that was established, the The school of Mecca was established around that, and inshallah ta'ala, we'll speak about that more in the lesson to come. And in the different, you had the school of Mecca, the school of Medina, the school of Al-Kufa, Al-Basra, Al-Sham, Misr, and the different schools that were established. In each school, certain Sahaba were sent there by Umar radiallahu anhu. And they established the knowledge in these different centers that later on became the centers of knowledge in the Muslim Ummah, in the Khilafah al-Islamiyah at that time, that spread the knowledge and spread different ways of seeking knowledge and different ways of thought and different schools of thought. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala be pleased with Umar ibn al-Khattab radiallahu anhu, because he established the preservation of the knowledge at the time of his Khilafah, and he established the preservation of the ahadith and the knowledge of the Prophet ﷺ during the Khilafah that he had, and the Sahaba that came after him. They learned of his ways and they implemented his ways radiallahu anhu. And next week inshallah we'll talk more about this. Subhanakallahumma bihamdik, nashhadu an la ilaha illa ant, nastaghfiruka wa natubu ilayk.
I wanna be in Jannah, Jannah, yeah. Jannah, Jannah. Every Muslim dreams to be up in Jannah, 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 Jannah. A pious person's destiny. Inshallah in Jannah, 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 Jannah.